From the Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. In 2013, this government passed the French Language Services Act, which designates services to be available here on Prince Edward Island in French. There also seemed to be a commitment to expand that list of services beyond just the French libraries, road signs, and 511. But neither the Act nor the regulations have been updated since it was passed. A question to the Minister of Acadian and Francophone Affairs. Does government have any plans to expand the number of designated services in the French Language Services Act and its regulations?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the honourable member for the question. In the report that was tabled in this House in just before the middle of December, it was indicated that there are areas that are envisaged for further effort and further commitment in the provision of French language services, and I'm pretty sure they total 6, so they're in the order of 4 to 6, but then it becomes a question of the priorities within those areas. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, the work is being done to proceed on those priorities as identified in that report.
Thank you, Premier. The Honourable Leader of the Third Party, your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The outgoing French Language Services Complaints Officer, who resigned, of course, in protest due to the Minister's inaction on expanding the language services, said to CBC last December that he had presented government with a list of what he called low-hanging fruit that could be easily implemented. A question to the Minister. How many of these recommendations have indeed been implemented?
Honourable Premier. Mr. Speaker, the commitment that was made in that report and then that has been pursued in meetings with the community leadership, the Société Saint-Thomas d'Aquin is leading that effort. We also have an advisory committee on French language services, Mr. Speaker, and the work is being done between the community organizations and leaders and the Department of Acadian and Francophone Affairs to identify a plan of action to indeed implement in a priority order those services as identified in the annual report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party, your second supplementary question.
Thank you. So I would interpret that none of these recommendations have yet been implemented. The Complaints Officer plays a key role in the proper functioning of this Act, serving as in effect as a link between the public and government. The Premier told us yesterday during budget estimates that a new appointment is imminent, though I can hardly see the point in that if the officer's advice continues to be ignored. A question to the Minister, do you plan to act on the advice you receive from your new Complaints Officer?
Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, we have many contacts with and organizational relationships with the Acadian and Francophone community, and one of the primary ways in which that relationship is worked out and where priorities are identified is with the advisory committee, Comité Consultatif, with the Acadian community, and was a very capable group there that has been meeting on a regular basis. And Mr. Speaker, to then pursue the precise point that's being asked, the designation of services for inclusion or addition to those currently being served under the French Language Services Act is a formal process that is pursued once the groundwork has been laid. And Mr. Speaker, the work is being done. The work is being done, and to identify the areas where additional services would formally be recognized and offered under that legislation. And in the process of getting there, there's a tremendous amount of work that is done in terms of actual French language service offered to the community by government, with upwards of 200 public servants with bilingual capacity, and the designation of those services services is anticipated and will take place through a plan of action that's worked out together with the community. That will be done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.